Welcome back to episode number 30 of Connection is Magic. This week our guest is the illustrious attorney Gary Greenberg. He is a music attorney based in Los Angeles, California. He spent 8 years as the in-house attorney for American Idol. He's represented multi-platinum and Grammy-winning artists in the urban space such as Tupac, Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, DJ Dahi, and many more. He's also a world-class jazz drummer and has been featured on many hit records, including some with Snoop Dogg himself. Thanks for joining us. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to Connection is Magic. I'm your host, Samson Schulman, a former music executive turned podcaster and coach. In a world obsessed with the highlight reel and keeping our difficulties hidden behind the curtain, we end up feeling lonely and isolated, and opportunities for human connection are missed. On this podcast, we dive deep with our guests and get them to share those dreaded, unfiltered pieces. We learn how to make lemonade out of life's lemons and realize adversity isn't sent to break us, but rather shape us into the greatest versions of ourselves. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Now let's begin our journey back home to connection. All right, welcome everybody to a special episode. Today we have our man Gary Greenberg in the building. How are you, man?
Outstanding.
Let's start back at the beginning, Gary, if you wouldn't mind. Tell us, where are you from?
I was born in San Diego, but I went to high school in LA.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a native Southern Californian, which is rare these days.
Being from Detroit, I've never really had to experience that, but yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful place. Everybody wants to come here and get famous.
Growing up, let's say high school or whatever, Did you want to do the band thing yourself, being a drummer, where you're like, I'm going to get signed and be a big star? And
I grew up in a pretty entrepreneurial household. My dad was a real estate developer, and his father was a very entrepreneurial guy, owned hotels and was a developer. So it was kind of in my blood to be an entrepreneur. And I love playing drums. I love the art, but frankly, it doesn't fulfill all of me. It fulfills part of me, but when I was playing full time, I was kind of starting to burn out on it. Every band I was ever in, I always did all the business, not because I wanted to. Nobody else wanted to. I'm the one making the deals with the club owners. I'm the one collecting the money because I enjoyed it. I needed to do a little bit of business, whatever little bit I could. And I think after 2 years of just playing full time, I just wasn't happy. And
what about family-wise? Because that always plays into it, I feel, right? We all want to make our family happy or proud. Or
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, ever since I could walk, I was told I was going to be a lawyer. And so when I announced after college that I was going to play music full-time, it didn't go over well.
I figured.
Not at all. And things were very strained for a while with my family. So, of course, when I came to the decision, I'm going back to law school, it was like, hallelujah, Finally he's come back to God here.
Yeah, they were popping champagne, right?
Exactly. But it was okay. It's like, honestly, the last thing I ever wanted to be was a lawyer. I think maybe because I was told that's what I had to do. And so to some extent, I think coming around to it, once I realized there was this thing called music law, which I only realized because one of the bands I was in had their own music lawyer, who I thought was like the coolest guy ever. Once I realized that there was a way I could actually be a lawyer and still be creative and still help musicians and be entrepreneurial and still play music, I was like, okay, this is a way you can only fight your destiny so long. And I felt like a great peace came over me when I said, okay, I can actually do both. I'm never going to stop playing. But, obviously there was some of the practical things came into it too. I think I did start to realize that it's a tough way to make a living, even back then, especially being a drummer. It's one thing if you're the artist, because as an artist, as the front person, you can write songs, you can start building assets, building property, but as a drummer, you're a hired hand. And
that's true.
And also that was right around the time when drum machines were starting in, and I saw more and more people were starting to lose gigs, get replaced in studios by drum machines. And a lot of drummers I was hanging out with were like, oh man, there's less work. And I kind of saw a glimpse into the future. Like I didn't want to have my whole life be at the whim of other people. I mean, there was one band I was in that I was really excited about that I got fired because the lead singer thought his girlfriend liked me. I mean, it was literally about that. She was flirting with me one day backstage, and the next day I'm gone. And I'm like, it's kind of an epiphany to me, like, you know what? I don't want this to be the rest of my life. I need something that's I can hold on to a little more.
What age were you when that happened to you?
I was like 22.
See, I don't know. When you're 22, you still think like you can conquer the whole world, I feel like, you know? But it's cool that you had that realization early.
But it was a combination of things. It wasn't just, no, the music thing is going to be too unstable for me. It was that combined with it wasn't really making me happy. And then like I said, music law was like this gift from heaven, because it's really, what music lawyers do is not what most lawyers do. And so it's a very sort of creative, entrepreneurial building type of part of the law. Unlike a lot of other areas of the law, which is all about fighting and, all the rest of it.
Making it as an artist is one of the most extreme examples, I think, of overcoming adversity.
Oh, it's brutal.
And yeah, in fact, this would be interesting. You said, how many artists actually recoup their original record deal? I mean, it was abysmal.
For a long time, I thought it was zero. I mean, or very close to zero. I've been corrected recently. I guess more and more artists are actually recouping only by virtue of the fact that they're not getting as much money. The old cliche is, well, the good thing about me not giving you a lot of money is you'll recoup faster.
Right.
That's the oldest hustle in the music
But that's
business.
true now.
Well, it kind of is true.
Okay.
It is true. It still is a bit of a hustle, but I mean, it's really hard to persevere and to keep it going when you're constantly, you're making very slow progress. Because all bands, you're trying to keep together a group of people. Everybody's got their own life, their own pressures, their own, things pulling them in other directions. I mean, every band I was in broke up for one reason or another. Either the key guy got a better offer to do something else, or somebody decided, I'm done, I'm going back to medical school, or whatever it is. I mean, and then again, it can also break down because of ego, because of really petty human things. One guy feels like he's not getting enough mic time, and the band starts fighting, and one guy feels like he's really the main guy in the band, and his name should be bigger than everybody else. Maybe he should even be getting a bigger cut of the gigs. Everybody else gets pissed. You argue over songwriting. You argue over, the one guy says, well, I'm really writing all the songs, and everybody else says, no, we write them together. I mean, there's a million things that can happen. Relationships are fragile in the best of situations.
In the best of situations,
right.
Yeah.
You try and put together 4 or 5 people, and you've got, I don't know what the exponential number there is, how many relationships you have to keep intact in that group. So historically, groups have imploded. Even the big ones. Artists live with a tremendous amount of anxiety. Anybody involved in the music business is in a constant state of anxiety, whether you're a business person or an artist.
A manager, whatever.
Because honestly, it's one of the most unpredictable businesses on the planet. As much as the executives try and make it predictable with their charts and their market research and all the rest of it, the fact of the matter is, hits happen from the most unexpected places. I think most of the time when a hit happens, it catches everybody by surprise. And when something doesn't work, everybody is surprised. And public is very fickle.
Absolutely.
And so when your stock and trade is predicting the public taste, you're going to live in a state of anxiety all the time.
Very well said. Now, it's interesting, though, because in your position, you're kind of like, what do they say? The house always wins. You're like the house. You're like the casino, because you're doing the deals. They're coming and going. And I'm sure all your clients, you hope for the best, of course, but you're not going down with the ship. That's the thing.
Well, that's why I'm doing this instead of, one of the reasons I'm doing this instead of playing drums. I mean, it is much more stable and predictable. I mean, the lawyer is probably the most stable part of the team, for sure.
So, and now, it's not like I don't think you thought that going in, or maybe you did.
I really didn't. I thought that, number one, I needed to do something entrepreneurial. When I found out what music lawyers did in terms of deal making and contracts and putting people together and sort of interacting with everybody else on the team. I thought, wow, that's really dynamic. It's sort of what I do anyway now on a very street level for all my bands. I can do this. And again, the voice in the back of my head, Gary's going to be a lawyer, Gary's going to be a lawyer, Gary's going to be a lawyer. All of a sudden it was like, wow, this is a win-win for me.
There was an artist that had a big hit on the radio. They were taking off, right? And you were doing that deal.
Right, I was doing a publishing deal for them.
You were doing a publishing deal for them with a major publisher, right?
Exactly.
And can you tell the listeners what happened in that?
Yeah, again, without naming names, I was a very young lawyer. This was one of my first really big, successful acts, so I was very excited.
They were all over the radio, right?
Yeah, they had a couple big hits going, and we were being offered really good publishing deals. And the lawyer who represented the publishing company called me one day and said, basically, I'm taking your act from you. And so he came to me and he said, I really like your client. I'm going to take them, basically. And I said, well, you can't do that. They're my client. And he goes, well, I can, and I've already talked to them about it. And they understand that if they want this deal to happen and other deals that I can make happen for them, then, thank you very much for getting them to this point. But you're a little fish and I'm a big fish. And
that's ice cold, Gary.
These are the rules of the jungle. And, and at the time, I was just shocked. And I said, this seems really fucked up. This is unethical and all the rest of it. And he goes, look, one day when you're older, you'll understand that this is just the rules of the jungle. That, the big fish eat the little fish, and that's the way it goes. And I remember I called my client, and my client said, really sorry, but we need this deal badly, and we love you, and we thank you for getting us to this point, but we don't really feel like we have a choice. It stung for a little while, but then I realized, okay, I just had to watch my back better. It taught me, somebody told me something once early on in my career, which was really valuable. They said, when stuff like that happens to you, you can't get mad at the person who you think has wronged you. You have to look at them like a teacher, because they're teaching you something.
Wow.
And so after that, I always watched my back.
Wow.
I was very naive, and I didn't know. And when I look back on it, I realized the warning signs were there, that this guy was sort of taking meetings with them and talking to them, and I was sort of allowing it. I wasn't interjecting myself enough and really making sure my client, what I should have done was had competing offers going, because then I could have used that. There are things I could have done to protect myself that I didn't know because I was young.
A little green, naive.
I was green, so I was very ripe for the picking. And so again, I don't really, looking back on it in retrospect, I would never do that to somebody.
Yeah.
But I have a different code of ethics than most people. But at the time, it was part of paying my dues. Lawyers pay dues just like artists pay dues, just like managers pay dues.
Is that right?
Everybody pays dues.
Okay.
Just being a lawyer doesn't mean all of a sudden you never struggle, you never pay dues, you never get screwed. No, not at all.
Well, you picked this area where you're totally in this.
There's nothing. No, it's
this safe bubble, and that's not right.
It ain't a bubble. It ain't a bubble, and it ain't safe. And you can always get second guessed. People are always sometimes pointing fingers. When something goes south, the artist is never to blame. So they're always look to blame other people. Blame the manager, blame the lawyer, blame the agent, blame everybody else. So it's not like lawyers are immune from
that wrath.
When things don't go well.
Yeah.
So I'm always on guard all the time. Now, fortunately in my career, I haven't really had many of those situations, or really hardly any, just because I'm such a good person. I always do the right thing.
Put the good energy out there.
And I'm always honest, and I'm always straightforward, so people don't really want to mess with me.
Yeah.
Even if they want to blame somebody, they're like, we can't blame Gary, because Gary always does his best.
Yeah.
But you can never really sit there and rest easy. It's a stressful business. And believe me, I take on a lot of stress every day. It's not this all smiley, happy job. It's a lot of stress, because I'm the one place that all my clients come to calm them down.
That's right. Yeah,
when things seem like they're spiraling out of control, people need to know they can call Gary, and Gary will ground them.
Yeah.
He'll be the rock. He's always steady, and I'm good at that. But it takes a toll. It's not easy to be that rock all the time.
No.
So believe me, everything has its positives and negatives.
You're like, I was going to say, you're like a police officer in a way. Like, police officers see a lot of bad shit. Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of bad shit, don't you?
I do. I see stuff that would just really, make your skin crawl, that people do to each other. Because the music business is a very exploitative business. You're talking about people's dreams, and whenever you've got artists running around who so desperately want something to happen for them, they're easy prey. And believe me, this town has the most talented artists in the world. I believe that. They also have the most talented hustlers.
Oh, wow. Well said, man.
It's like when I look out of my window over the LA basin, I see a lot of sheep and I see a lot of wolves. And hopefully I try and save as many sheep as possible from the wolves. That's part of my job, but I can't save them all.
Oh my God. You're like the Humane Society here. It's awesome.
It's true.
You've even told me about where, deals will come into play and like lifelong friends who are figuring out their structure and splits and all that. You've seen long friendships just fucking fall apart, right? Over a deal.
Of course.
I mean...
And it's not just over money. I mean, money is part of it, but I've seen deals fall apart over whose name is going to go first in a credit. I mean, there's a lot of emotions at stake when it comes to art like this. People get really invested in their art.
Yeah.
And it becomes precious to them. And so they're not rational about it. I literally had a deal not too long ago where it was held up for almost 6 months because these two producers could not agree whose name was going to produce by X and Y.
And who was going to be X?
Who was going to be who, and who was going to be Y?
And these people had a history with each other?
They had a history.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had done other deals together, and it was always X was always first, and X was my guy. And all of a sudden, Y one day decided, you know what? I'm tired of you always being first. I want to be first.
And what was the result? What happened?
Well, ultimately, X went first because Y finally broke down and said, I need my money. Because X was a little more successful and was able to wait it out. But I mean, I could not believe the conversations I had with Y's lawyer saying, and unfortunately, they never worked together after that because Y decided to stand up and say, wait a minute, I want to go first.
Oh.
And they ended up fighting over it. It killed an entire wonderful collaboration where they had produced a lot of hit records together.
That sounds like a total ego getting the best of somebody, though, doesn't it?
You never know. Yeah, of course, but you never know where it's coming from. You never know if it's somebody talking in their ear. You never know if it's a girlfriend or somebody else saying, why are you always second? But you never know what gets in somebody's head.
That's true. Have you seen, say a brand new artist just coming out, nobody gives a shit about that new artist. And then once some success starts setting in,
totally.
All of a sudden, people are clamoring. There's people getting in the artist's ear. It's almost like I'm envisioning like blood in the water. And sharks come, you know what I mean?
Again, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And some of the sharks are good sharks. I mean, some of the sharks are the kind of sharks you want. You want, when the blood's in the water, you want the big agent at William Morris. Unfortunately, a lot of times in our business, success tends to happen quickly when it happens. Even though you may have toiled for a lot of years to get there, when it happens, it tends to happen quick.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're unprepared for it. And so it's not like most businesses, when you get successful, it happens sort of gradually. You get one successful restaurant, then you open up another one, and then you go buy a house to help you with taxes, and you start getting investments. It's like you have a chance to sort of ramp up and learn how to be a good business person.
It's true.
But artists, a lot of times, are not prepared for it. It happens really fast, and then all of a sudden, every friend they ever had, every family member they ever had is like, oh, wow, can you help me out? Can you give me a loan? Now you're rich and famous. And all of a sudden, they've got entourages of people that want to just hang around and be around them, and they've got these huge expenses, and it's like, and it gets really overwhelming, and artists a lot of times just don't know how to handle it. And sometimes just the weight of all that brings them down.
You've seen that?
Oh, totally. I've totally seen that. I've seen family members turn on artists
Family members too.
Family members,
wow,
absolutely.
Man.
Or like, well, you owe this to me now. Now that you're a big success, like, I've always wanted to start my own clothing line. So of course you're going to help me, right? Like you're going to put your name on my clothing line, right? And the artist is like, well, no, I'm not. And the cousin is like, we talked about this when we were kids. Like, are you kidding me now?
That's great.
How could you leave me hanging?
That's so great. Oh my God. I think what would be interesting to talk about is you do a lot of work in the hip hop business. Can we talk about how you found your way into hip hop?
Sure. My first really big client of my own when I worked at 2 firms first before I went off on my own. And my first really big client that was my client was Young MC, who had the song Bust a Move.
Okay, right. Yeah, everybody knows that.
Which was a huge song. It was the first hip hop Grammy.
Oh, nice.
It was it's still a huge song.
Yeah.
25 years later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's not many songs that are that iconic.
Yeah, it's true. Especially in hip hop, right?
Especially in hip hop, exactly. And so what ends up happening, like in any other business, is success in one area begets success in other areas. In other words, because I was out in the community with Marvin, his name's Marvin Young MC, of course, the other clients that were starting to come to me were other rappers.
Right.
Who I was meeting places and with him. So I just started to get into the rap world a lot. But then it got really interesting because as a drummer, most of the records I started to play on, most of the gigs I got were also in hip hop. Because I'm a trained jazz drummer. I'm a jazz fusion drummer. And hip hop is jazz based. A lot of people don't really realize that, but jazz and hip hop are like kissing cousins. That's why a lot of hip hop artists will sample old jazz records and things because they want to get that ding, 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 ding.
Absolutely,
they want to get the hop. I remember the very first job I got was I represented a producer who he was getting in trouble because he had sampled a drum loop from something and he got kind of busted by it. He didn't tell anybody. And I got a call from the label saying, like, you need to take this out. Like, we're planning on releasing this record next week, and we just...
You get rid of the sample.
Yeah, and my guy was freaking out. He's like, well, that's like the whole foundation of the track. And I'm like, well, let me hear it. And I said, I can do that. He's like, what do you mean? He goes,
this was a client of yours?
This was a client of mine. He's like, what do you mean you can do that? I'm like, I can do it. Just, I'll bring my drums down to the studio. I can totally recreate that.
Oh, man.
It's just cowbell and a hip-hop beat. I could totally do it.
Yeah.
He's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. So I went down there and I did it, and they loved it. And then this producer and I he used to use me for a lot of things.
Wow.
So I was on Bone Thugs and Harmony records and...
Snoop Dogg
records and all kinds of hip-hop records because... Again, a lot of times they would already have a beat programmed, and they wanted me to come and play over it and just do that bing, jing, ding, 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 just to give it the little. They called it that bounce. She's going to give it that bounce. So here I am, sort of playing music in that genre too, which also
just furthered your hip hop roots.
Right, and I ended up representing Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Oh, you were their lawyer for some time.
I was their lawyer for a long time.
Nice.
And the Loonies and all kinds of iconic rap groups, and
it's crazy.
I personally like the music. I mean, I like the genre. I think at least rhythmically, I don't always understand the lyrics, frankly, but rhythmically, I think it's among the most adventurous music has been for some time. In terms of the grooves and the way it fuses different kinds of rhythms, I think that hip hop culture, at least at its best, is an art form of protest, of public statement. I represent MC Ren, who is one of the original members of NWA. Yeah. And when you see a genre of music that can affect social change and social commentary, to me, that's taking music.
It's the needle of pop culture, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, me personally, I don't think we see enough of that these days.
When you talk about shit going wrong, which is a theme of this podcast right now.
Nice.
Hip hop is like, the border of like Pakistan where you've got there's a lot of shit that goes wrong, particularly in hip hop.
There is.
Would you say it's for
the reason that people probably guess it is, which is, there's a street mentality, I think. People bring that sort of street mentality a lot of times to the business side of it. I know certainly Suge Knight did.
Yeah, well, I didn't know Suge, thank God.
Yeah.
But there's some of that. But I don't think that's the real heart of it. I mean, the genre itself, unfortunately, because of sampling, that creates a lot of problems.
It's on a practical level.
On a practical level, the art form relies heavily on copyright infringement.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whenever you're building a genre of music that relies on using other people's music, you're already building in potential problems and obstacles. And especially because the whole sample clearance thing can get so expensive and tedious, people don't always do it. They try and hide it. They speed it up, they slow it down, they do just enough of it, and it's treacherous, and a lot of people don't want to always do business with hip-hop people because they're afraid of samples. It ends up being very contentious in all kinds of deals that I do when there's samples at issue. But of course, there is a certain street mentality, but I don't think that's unique to hip-hop. I've seen it in rock. I've seen it in other places too.
Okay.
Same mentality of people that basically came from a survival. When I say street, I mean more like people who've had to really struggle to survive. If you come from that place, it's hard to have the long view of business. You're always like, where am I getting paid? Where am I getting paid? Where am I getting paid? And that can make business challenging to do. But I don't think that's unique to rap. I've seen it in other areas of the business too. And the interesting thing is it's very misunderstood because I think a lot of people sort of stereotype rappers as gangsters or whatever. But again, the music, I just think, it's proven to be a very resilient art form.
Yeah.
I mean, people wrote it off. I remember early on when I represented, like I said, Young MC and then Bone Thugs and some of the other groups I represented, a lot of my colleagues were like, you don't want to get too many rap clients, man, because that genre is going to die.
They thought it was going to die?
Oh, yeah. Early on, people thought this is a fad. This is going out.
Oh my God.
Honestly, how resilient can an art form be where people are just yelling into a microphone?
I think rock is that way. I think rock feels like it's dead.
Totally.
We spoke on it earlier. Rock at times can feel one-dimensional. There's just so many ways you could go in hip-hop that allow it to keep morphing,
and
which is what it's doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
You worked on the American Idol show for a little while, right?
Yeah.
So take us through that, maybe how you landed that gig.
The show was just starting, and what American Idol did, it was an English company, and what they do is they decided early on, because once the contestants get to a certain point, and they do this now with The Voice, all their shows have followed this model. They make them sign, the contestants, when they get to a certain point, they have to sign a record deal and a management deal and a merch deal and a touring deal.
Before the show's over, right?
Before the show's over. If they don't sign all that stuff, they don't continue. They don't go on the show. And so...
Wait, I just got to pause. That seems really, heavy and fucked up to me to like put people in a headlock for life. I mean, I know you're giving
Well, it's
them
not
a
for
shot,
life. It's not for life because it's only if you get to a certain point are they even really going forward with you. It's usually, quite frankly, it's only the winner. It's sort of guaranteed all that stuff. But they want options on everybody else.
Right. Okay.
Just in case.
Right.
There's somebody who came in like a Daughtry who was...
Oh, that's right. He didn't even win. Yeah.
He came in like 4th or 5th. That was season 5 of Idol, and I represented the contestants. Actually, Taylor Hicks won that year, and Daughtry, they picked up an option on him and signed him. So they want the option to sign everybody. Anyway, so they've got to get everybody to sign all these contracts, and they decided it would be chaos for everybody to have their own lawyer. So what they do is they want them all to have one lawyer for that process. And so they actually do like an American Idol for lawyers where they bring in 4 or 5 lawyers and everybody gets like a half hour to make their pitch to the contestants.
You mean you as the lawyer?
You as the lawyer. You come in there and say, I'm really great, I do this, I do that, I do this. And then after all 5 lawyers have done their thing, the contestants vote. And whoever gets the most votes is the lawyer for the contestants for that season.
Mind-blowing, Gary. That's how it works? You guys are basically auditioning for the gig. That is great. Okay.
It's pretty fucking cool.
Okay,
actually.
awesome.
I got on the list of lawyers that were under consideration. Then I actually had to do an interview to even make the short list, the 5 lawyers.
Wow.
So I had to go meet with the producers and their legal team and everything. So yeah, then I got put in the mix, and season 3 was the first year that I got to do my presentation, and I won.
Amazing.
That was Fantasia's year.
And so you got to represent Fantasia.
And I still represent Fantasia.
That's very
to
cool.
this day.
That's very cool. She won.
She won.
And did any of like second or third place that year, did they go anywhere?
Well, Jennifer Hudson.
Whoa, she was in that too?
She was in that year.
Wow.
She actually came in like 7th or 8th or something.
Wow.
Yeah, she went on to be huge.
Yeah,
huge.
movie star too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, okay.
So there've been a lot of really great performers that have come out of that. You know, it's really interesting because I have clients all the time, prospective clients will come to me and say, I've been asked to be on The Voice, and should I do it? Mm. And I always say, what else do you have going on?
Great question.
If you don't have a lot else going on, then this can be an easy way in. It's like a fast track to an international audience. But if you have a lot going on already, it's probably not a good idea, because the perception in the industry, unfortunately, is not always good about former contestants, even if they did well.
Right.
Because the shows are essentially karaoke shows.
I know. Yeah, I think what it does is it sort of decimates your credibility as an artist. I think. That's just me personally.
Well, it can.
You know,
it can. So it's this real catch-22. Like, you get this incredible national exposure that you couldn't buy.
Yep.
You're basically getting to perform in front of millions and millions and millions of people. For sure. Labels would kill for that kind of exposure.
It'd probably take you like 5 years of slugging it out on the road, if you even get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got this incredible opportunity to be heard and seen for all these people, but unfortunately, you're singing other people's songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So being a great singer and being an artist are not always the same thing. Mm. And so you can get this reputation for being a great singer, and nobody knows you as an artist.
That's true.
And honestly, most people I get signed to deals these days, they get signed more for their artistry than their singing.
Of course. I feel like because there's far more great singers out there than great artists.
Correct. Look, the shows are not there to make great artists. They're there to get ratings.
That's right. They don't really care what happens to the artist after that season, truth be told. I mean...
Truth be told, right. I mean, I think they do. Of course, they would like their artist to succeed. It reflects well on them.
Right. Did you enhance your game as a music lawyer from that experience? I mean,
I've enhanced, honestly, it's like everything else is going to sound cliche, but I try and enhance my game every day. Every experience I have, every new client, every new situation.
Even how many years you been doing this?
30 years.
Wow. You still have that mindset?
You got to. You got to. If you don't have the mindset of, I'm going to learn something new every day and sharpen my game. Yeah. Then when that happens, then it's time for me to quit.
Wow. Have you thought about, leaving the music business? Because I mean, you saw the golden days, didn't you?
Yeah,
where you millions
totally.
of I never saw the golden days.
Right.
So I would imagine for a lot of people who were exposed to that and then now they see this new reality, it's a tough pill for a lot of people.
It is a tough pill, although I think most industry veterans that have been doing it as long as I have feel like the worst is over. Yeah. We've suffered through 15, 16 years of moments where people thought the music business is done. It's over.
There was exactly in that window, it wouldn't be crazy to think of veterans thinking about leaving the business, right?
Totally. Well, a lot of people did.
Many did. Yeah.
A lot of people did. But you know what, Sam? This is all I know how to do. I mean, I'm a lifer. Yeah. There's no way I'm not going anywhere. I just changed. I just became closer to the street, so to speak, and just built up. People, like you said, even in bad times, people still need lawyers. They need them for different things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so I've just, fortunately, my skill set, because I'm so entrepreneurial and because I'm an artist myself, I was able to adapt and change my business model, where I was helping a lot of more struggling up-and-coming artists sort of put things together and help them make plans, and I had to be more entrepreneurial, but in a way it was kind of fun. Again, it upped my game. I feel like I'm a better lawyer now as things are starting to turn around because of my entrepreneurial skills and having survived some of those really tough times.
That's right. War wounds.
I do have a war wound. But like I said, this is all I ever do. I mean, I had friends and family were like, maybe you should think about film law, maybe you should think about TV law, maybe you should think about doing copyright. I'm like, this is...
No, you're a lifer.
This is what I do.
Yeah.
Like, if it gets to the point where I don't have enough clients, then the music is probably dead.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, that's what 30 years gets you too. You know, you got a foundation after 30 years
you got
where
roots.
you got roots.
You got roots.
So,
and thank God I have a really strong reputation because I've always done good things for people. I don't rest on my laurels ever. I don't ever go into work and say I've been doing this 30 years, so I'm cool.
I'm good.
safe. No, I mean, I'm still got to be hustling just like day one. I got to be on my hustle just like day one, dude.
Even like after like a big success or something like that, you know, it doesn't. You don't like pause too long with that, right?
Can never pause too long. Wow. Because you know what? There's a lot of hot young lawyers coming up.
Man.
That all want my clients.
Yeah, that's right.
When I was a young lawyer, it was the big fish in a weird way. Now that I'm a big fish, it's the little fish that are trying to nip around at my client. You got to worry about the little fish as much as the big.
Gary, we're going to put that in the show notes. That's a good quote, man. But you have friends that have said, fuck this, I'm out of here. And those were vets, you're saying?
Totally, absolutely. Wow. People gone into real estate, people gone into other things. They're like, I can't handle it. Yeah.
Does that throw, I mean, it's almost like seeing like a fellow comrade go down in like some gunfire or something, right?
It does, it's sad.
Yeah,
for sure it's sad.
Yeah.
And of course it gives you pause. Like, wow, you know, am I next?
Yeah.
But you just can't think that way. Again, music's my whole life. As a player, as a business person, as a lawyer, I just don't have a choice. That's and frankly, I think most creative people, the people that win, you have to have that attitude. Like, I don't have a choice. For me, that's what it is. You know, I believe this. I was put on this planet to do this, and I'm going to do it till I can't do it no more.
That's powerful. Talk to us about side hustles.
So I've taught at UCLA Extension now for a long time. I'm teaching again this January it's called Turning Your Talent into Dollars. It's a really cool program. It keeps me sharp. Because as a teacher, like, you don't want to start getting asked questions that you're like, I don't know.
That's right.
Hey, Gary, how much do you get per stream from Spotify? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's forced me to stay on my game. Which is really cool because as a professor, you're supposed to know shit.
Of course. You know, there's a lot of music schools out there where the people doing the teaching haven't really been in the mix.
Right.
You know, and I think
exactly. And I think that's a problem with academia in general. Is there are a lot of people teaching who don't really know what it's like to be on the front lines taking bullets.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I have a lot to offer people.
Another thing we've talked about before, which I think is interesting, is you know, you have been sort of courted or approached by bigger law firms throughout your career.
Totally.
And you know, I feel like you've always said no, right?
I've always said no.
And can we talk about?
Sure.
Go into that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against the law firms. Obviously, I have a lot of friends there, and there are more big law firms than people like me. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, especially people at my level. I mean, there's a certain strength in numbers that happens at those firms that is undeniable. That when they pool their resources, they can get more and more. They have more relationships, get to more people. So I get all that, but I have a way of doing things that's very unique, and I worked in the firms when I started enough to know that I would butt heads with my partners in the firms. I know that I do a lot of what I'd call pro bono stuff. I cut deals for people all the time. I'm very sensitive to this. I believe in this person. They need help. They can't really afford to pay me what I'm worth, so I'm going to cut them a break because I believe in them. And I think it'll pay off in the long term.
Yep.
And they're a good guy and they deserve it and they need help too. And that kind of stuff does not go over well in the firms.
It's about the bottom line, period, right?
Yeah,
or what?
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you got to answer to your partners for your time. So at the end of the month, you're like, well, why'd you spend so much time on this artist that's not paying us anything? Every month they have to justify how much money they're bringing in.
Wow.
And their businesses like everything else. And it's not a rap on them. That's the way business works.
Yeah.
And I know that in order to do what I do, which is so much give back and so much, quote unquote, doing the right thing, that I can't answer to anybody for that. I have to be able to just...
That's powerful,
I have to look in my own soul and say,
powerful.
I'm doing this and I don't have to explain it to anybody.
I love that.
I'll give you just one piece of wisdom that I heard recently. In Jewish tradition, an effective way to argue, to criticize, to get into disagreement with someone. Mm-hmm. And that's probably no more needed than ever right now, because the way that our public discourse is all about insults, and it's like name calling and insults and all the rest of it. It's a very non-Jewish way of disagreeing with someone. And basically what our tradition says is that when you disagree with somebody, the first thing you're supposed to do before you say you're an idiot or I disagree is the Torah says you're supposed to make your ear a funnel. In other words, take as many opposing viewpoints in as possible before you blurt out your conclusion. You may be so sure that somebody's full of shit. And then all of a sudden, instead of just saying, you know what, you're full of shit, I disagree with you, you stop and you say, you know what, I heard you, let me look into it, let me get back to you, okay? And you do your research and you're like, wow, maybe they're not quite so full of shit as I thought. And that then affects how you respond instead of just being so sure that you're right.
Somebody told me, and it's not Yiddish, but a really wise person just told me, it's not a crazy thing to ask yourself every so often, what if I'm wrong?
Not only is it not crazy, it's very wise.
There you go.
Because we're all victims of, again, our insecurities, our anxieties. We tend to convince ourselves sometimes that we're right about stuff for the wrong reasons. Again, a big part of business in general is, even when you get into a disagreement with someone, the art form is to argue with integrity and honor and facts and common sense, and not from emotion or entitlement or anxiety.
Did you learn this in law school, by the way?
No.
Or this is just
stuff I learned along. They don't teach this in law school.
They don't teach.
No.
That's the Gary special.
This is stuff I learned along the way. And when you do it that way, when the thing is done and somebody has won and somebody has lost, or you've compromised somehow, it's just as important that the people you were opposing, that you maintain a good relationship with them on the way out.
Wow.
Because it's a small business and you're going to see those people again. And if they feel like you treated them with respect, and they feel like you fought fair, you didn't hit below the belt, you didn't, and it's unfortunate because I think that our society has gotten to the point where it's okay to hit below the belt. Winning is all that matters. If you have to lie, if you've got to hit below the belt, if you got to sucker punch somebody, you do what you got to do because winning is all that matters. And I don't agree with that. Because like you said a minute ago, it's about your root system.
Yes.
And your root system, you don't want to have poison roots.
Exactly.
You fucked somebody over because you lied to them or cheated to them or something.
It carries on. Yeah.
That's a poison root.
Absolutely.
That can end up killing opportunities down the road. You want all your roots to be healthy and with integrity. And there are some lawyers who have more of a scorched earth, mentality about making deals. It's like, I'm just gonna try and strong arm my way into positions.
So don't name names, but I'm sure you've clashed with other attorneys. And what is it? A small business, as we know. What's it like when you see these people 3 months later or whatever in another deal?
Well, it's definitely difficult, but I pride myself. Like I said, it's really more their problem than mine, because I don't take anything personally. If I see them out and about, I'm totally cool. It's like, I'm not living in their world. I don't know what pressure they're under. I don't know if they're having a problem at home. I don't know what it is. And I don't take anything personally. You can't. You have to stay calm. You got to stay objective. That's part of what I get paid to do.
Maybe you could drop some wisdom on that. Like, you can't take things personally. I feel like a lot of folks certainly do take a lot of things personally.
Of course.
What sort of wisdom would you put out there to help people keep it in the right perspective?
Well, because at the end of the day, you know what you're about. And so when you take stuff personally, you're letting somebody else convince you that you're not worthy. That's the only reason to take it personally. When somebody tells you, you know what, you suck, you know what, you fucked up, whatever, if you don't have confidence in your own integrity, then you're going to be like,
You might start buying into that.
Yeah, you're going to take it personally and say, get defensive and say, what do you mean, man?
Yeah.
But if you're really confident in yourself that like whatever they're saying is their problem and they're projecting on you, then you're so much stronger. You're not validating any of that shit, and you immediately get the high ground all the time.
Wow.
You never lose the high ground if you're always in that place.
Okay, so tell us what your biggest blessing in disguise has been throughout your career.
I think the biggest blessing in disguise is the fact that I'm an active musician. Is that I'm an active playing musician, because it balances me. Whenever I start to get discouraged, making music is such a profound experience for me that it gives me the strength to go back in and say, I need to stay in this business, because this magic is so powerful that no matter what challenges I have, I can't leave it, because the business takes a lot from you.
It's 24/7, it feels like.
It demands a lot of you. It takes a lot from you. I'm divorced, so I feel like the business in a lot of ways cost me my marriage. It wasn't the only thing. But it's tough. It's tough to sustain really, because it's so demanding. You gotta find balance in your life. The business can be, like you said, it can be all consuming, but it's not really healthy. There are certain times in your business career where you may have to surrender to that when you're trying to build something. But the trap you get into is, even once you've built it, is you want more. You want more, you want more, you want more. Don't neglect your personal life and the people that are important to you. It's really hard.
I've seen people in this business, man, 50s, like never been married. I mean, it's nuts what...
Well, yeah, and honestly, on some level, that's actually wise. Rather than get into a relationship and then not be able to really give to it. And it's not even time. The revelation I've learned is not so much time, it's quality of time.
Okay. Meaning like it's...
Meaning that you're not present even when you're with friends and family. Because you're so burnt and you're so consumed that you're
deals kicking around in your head, right?
You're answering the phone, you're checking emails. Yep. You're never really present for other people and other things.
Wow.
And it's a trap. It's like a drug.
Well, because the deal seems life or death in a lot of cases, doesn't it, Gary?
It really does to people. And so I'm always the first one. People know me, like I'll crack jokes. I'll do very borderline inappropriate, say inappropriate things just to get everybody to take a breath. My reputation is the most important thing to me. Always has been. And so... More
than the money, obviously.
More than the money.
Yeah.
More than the money, more than the ego, more than the validation. People, I go out all the time, people are like, you're Gary Greenberg? And I'm like, I think so. Like, I'm looking around like, I don't know, maybe he's here somewhere. But I always still just consider myself really to be like a humble servant of my clients. And I never have let it get to my head. I know people in the business think of me in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it always kind of takes me aback a little bit.
The reputation, you're saying.
The reputation, yeah. No, but I mean the reputation, the regard that people have for my name and stuff takes me a little back, because again, I see myself as just a humble guy, just trying to do good stuff.
None of it went to your head, really.
It really
That's
hasn't.
really great.
I refuse to let it.
Lastly, what's your favorite quote?
I was watching a movie the other night, and Winston Churchill was on there. I've always liked, you have nothing to fear but fear itself.
And take it to the next step. The reason why that quote is so important, you feel
because fear is what holds us all back from achieving our goals and being our higher selves. I believe that we're all capable of so much more than we allow ourselves to achieve, because we convince ourselves we can't do shit. We convince ourselves it's too hard. We convince ourselves we're not smart enough, we're not capable enough, and that's all fear talking. Instead of just saying, I'm going to trust myself. I know I have abilities. I know I'm smart. But at the end of the day, what holds most people back is their own fear of failure, their own fear of being judged. And even entertainers, I think one of the hardest things I see in young entertainers that come into my office is they're holding back.
Because they're fearful.
Because they're fearful of making a mistake. They're fearful of hitting a wrong note. They're fearful of going for something and missing.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that's what people want. People want to see people who take chances, who go for that note.
Who might mess up.
Even if they don't hit it.
because it almost inspires us to break out our fear. That's what it is. Wow, that's powerful. Oof. Gary, such a pleasure, man. I'm really, really grateful to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sam.
Lots of gems on here. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next episode.
Thank you so much again for tuning in to today's episode. It really means the world to me. If you heard anything relatable that created new awareness for you, please visit our podcast on iTunes and leave a rating or review. This helps build our audience. Please comment, like, and share this episode out with your family, friends, coworkers, or anyone who you feel would benefit from the messages shared in today's episode. I'm really, really grateful for your help in spreading these messages of hope and wisdom. The world is in such great need right now, and your support helps carry the message onward to others who need it. Also, please consider becoming a monthly financial contributor to the podcast. You can do so by visiting connectionismagic.com and clicking on the Patreon link. Patreon is a third-party platform which helps support creators in exchange for exclusive content and offers. You'll be able to get discounted merchandise like comfy hoodies, t-shirts, as well as retreat discounts where we'll have special guest speakers and group activities to connect you with like-minded community members. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, please stay connected.